How can faith and public health work together? Welcome everyone to MAACA's Faith and HIV/AIDS Awareness Month conversation. My name is Candace Smith. I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for MAACA Hudson. Our theme today is a question that I believe is both timely and necessary. How can faith and public health work together? For many of us, faith is about caring for people, protecting life, extending compassion, offering hope, and reminding people that their circumstances do not determine their worth. Public health has a very similar responsibility. Public health asks, how do we keep people healthy? How do we prevent illness? How do we make sure people have access to information, testing, treatment, prevention, and care? So perhaps faith and public health are not as far apart as sometimes we make them seem. The challenges come when fear, shame, misinformation, or judgment enters the conversation. And HIV is an area where those things have caused tremendous harm. For decades, HIV has been surrounded by misconceptions. People have been afraid to talk about it. People have been afraid to get tested. People living with HIV have experienced rejection, isolation, and stigma. But we have to separate what we believe about a person from what we know about a virus. HIV is a virus. A person living with HIV is a human being. And those two things should never be confused. Today, we want to create a space where we can talk about HIV honestly, without shame, without stereotypes, and without judgment. So let's establish a few facts about HIV and AIDS. HIV and AIDS are not the same thing. HIV stands for Human Immune Deficiency Virus. AIDS, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, is the most advanced stage of HIV infection. With effective treatment, HIV can be controlled and progression to AIDS can be prevented. HIV is not spread by ordinary human contact. You cannot get HIV from hugging someone, shaking their hand, sharing a toilet seat, sharing dishes, being around someone who has HIV, or being bitten by a mosquito. And here's one of the most important facts I want everyone to leave with today. People living with HIV have treatment options that can reduce the amount of virus in their blood to an undetectable level. When a person maintains an undetectable viral load, HIV is not sexually transmitted. That is what we mean when we say U equals U. Undetectable equals untransmittable. That is a message of hope. It means an HIV diagnosis does not mean that someone's life is over. It means treatment matters, testing matters, access to healthcare matters, and compassion matters. And this is where I believe faith has an important role. Faith communities can become places where people feel safe enough to ask questions, where someone can say, I need to get tested without shame, where someone can disclose that they are living with HIV and still know that they will be loved, where parents can have honest conversations with their children about health and prevention, where we can pray for healing while also supporting medical treatment, where we can recognize that seeking health care is not a failure of faith, and where we can replace judgment with education, fear with facts, and stigma with compassion. So I didn't expect it to be that long. I really didn't, but welcome you all to How Faith in Public. health can work together, a virtual conversation. I want to thank you all for being here today and being part of this conversation. And I would love for you all to each introduce yourselves. I'm going to start in the role that I see it in on here, and that's Celeste. If you don't mind just giving a short introduction to yourself.
Good morning, everyone. Um, my name is Celeste Knight, and I have been a community engagement person for several years. I've always been an advocate for the community in different areas. I have also been, or I also am, a licensed health agent. So I've um, been in the health field and arena and for quite some times, over 20 years, in and out of different positions. So I can understand the HIV. I know how sensitive it is. I understand the funding, and I understand community engagement with this particular health arena. So I'm in the community and willing to help as best I can and share knowledge or do whatever it is that is needed to be done as best I can.
Thank you so much, Miss
Mhm,
Celeste.
mhm.
Appreciate it. Miss Pat Morris.
Good morning. I'm Pat Morris. I'm a writer, mostly career journalist. I've done a lot of work in the public space, nonprofit space, particularly women and minorities. That includes health, but is not exclusive to it. Right now, I'm vice president of the Conference of St. Vincent de Paul Society that's based at Our Lady Queen of Peace Church in Newport Richey. We provide food, some money for medications, housing when we can, a lot of referrals for people. It is faith-based, but but it serves everybody. And a lot of the workers are not Catholic. And I want to make it clear that when I'm speaking, I'm not speaking for the conference or for the church, but just my own opinions.
Gotcha. Thank you. Miss Valerie Anderson Stallworth.
Good morning, folks. Hey, Candace. Hey, Pat.
Okay.
Haven't seen either of you in a while. My name is Valerie Anderson Stallworth. I serve in several capacities in our community. I actually retired from the American Cancer Society, where we did extensive studies on health disparities in cultural spaces, as well as those folks in minority organizations and groups for treatment. So there's data to back this challenge with health and faith meeting in the kind of crossroads. I also serve on a couple local boards of health facilities that deal with this on a daily basis with regards to handling diagnosis and even seeking treatment in some spaces, as well as a part of the faith community. So I am here to, of course, provide my opinion. And I did do a little bit more research to try to close some of the gaps in the talking points and questions that Candace gave us. So I'm looking forward to this conversation this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. Mr. Marlo Jones, based in Florida.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Candace, for inviting me on, and hello, everybody. My name is Marlo Jones. I am a community organizer with the nonprofit Faith in Florida and vice president of the African American Club. I've been involved in civics and engagement for the past 15 years of my life, particularly on the west side of Pasco County, but also branching out in other areas of the state. I'm very happy to be here and see all of these wonderful, familiar faces. And I want to thank Candace and MAACA for providing this wonderful education for us so we could go back and share it with members in our community who need it the most. So thank you. I'm happy to be here and be a part of this.
All right, all right. Thank you all, for joining. I really appreciate it. I know each of you very well, and I know that, you all can provide good thoughts for the community on this topic. So you all were presented with four different prompts. I'm going to start with number one. And whatever prompt you decided that you wanted to respond to, even if it's more than one, you can do that. Those of you that may catch this conversation virtually later, feel free to answer the prompt in the comment section. So, okay, these conversations that we're going to be having for this month is going to explore four different themes. Can faith and public health work together? How have faith communities and public health work together to serve communities? And where can we build stronger partnerships? Anybody chose that prompt?
I can go with that prompt. I chose all of them actually, so whatever you need me to do, I think I'll be ready. Yes, of course. Can faith and public health work together? I strongly feel that they can, and they oftentimes do. We may not be aware of it, but they do. Collaborative efforts between religious institutions, public health organizations, usually have to leverage shared values, compassion, community service. We have to be concerned with the whole well being of the person that's seeking treatment or seeking testing. We have to really be ready to look at health disparities and ways that we can work together to improve health outcomes. We can build stronger partnerships by building these community coalitions. And, that includes all of the work that's available in the health space, as well as the faith based. And I also include inspirational, because sometimes when we are talking about subjects that have a stigma attached to them and you speak faith based, some people automatically go to the church, where faith is all encompassing in our inspirational world, and can include inspirational leaders and organizations such as Faith in Florida, who are, basically non-denominational, but they serve a need with bringing together faith leaders. So yeah, I think they can work together. And in the toward the end, I'll provide some examples of how they do work together.
I was just going to say, well, is there one example you can give? But we'll wait. We'll wait on it. Sounds good. Anybody else want to answer the prompt for number one?
Yeah, I was going to piggyback off of Valerie. I think what MAACA is doing, and your partnerships that you worked with people on local levels at the health department, going out into the community where people are impacted, I think that is a way that helps make this a little bit better, and educating. That's the biggest thing that I see being a problem. A lot enough people are not educated on where they could get resources, where they can get insurance. So organizations like MAACA partnering with the health department and partnering with other organizations to bring awareness and educate the community, I think is vital.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, and Faith in Florida helps to bridge that gap as well. I, enjoy the partnership because growing up in church, I would have a pull to be out into the community, but then sometimes feel guilty, like maybe I should put, that energy into the church. But, seeing organizations like Faith in Florida really made me feel like, what, it is okay for me to take what God has given me and take it out into the community and work it in that way. So, shout out to Faith in Florida. Okay, all right. We're doing good, moving along. So we're gonna get into some more, trickier topics. So number two is faith, sexual wellness, and HIV testing. Why can conversations about sexual health and HIV testing sometimes be uncomfortable in faith communities? And how can we make testing and knowing your status a normal part of taking care of yourself?
I can talk about a little bit. I don't know. Okay, I mean this I think we all know. I mean this is the killer one. It really is, because And I want to say that what Valerie said about inspirational communities, because you think church, and as we know, it's always been the case, but now especially church and religion and faith are being used to be suppressive of all of these things. But I think they always have been. We're a Puritan country, and so a lot of times, even the words are funny. If we say an adult movie, we don't mean a thoughtful, sophisticated movie. We mean sex. If people say immoral, they think sex. We just have such a hang up in religious communities, not all of them, but I think most of them, about sex. And so it's difficult to talk about. I think it's difficult for people who've ingested this their whole lives also to be realistic. They don't want to admit what's really going on. And I've worked with that. I used to work at Planned Parenthood. I have kids. Parents don't want to admit that their kids are sexual. Spouses don't want to admit that their spouse may be non-monogamous. So it's the identity is so tied up in morality. Abstinence is the only thing, and my kid, doesn't work. And we all know that's not true. We can see the STD rates, we can see the pregnancy rates, we can see. I had one psychiatrist tell me that the biggest reason for non-compliance with teenagers taking depression medication was because it suppresses the libido. Try telling that to the parents. They just don't want to see their children as sexual. So I think I'm not sure how we do it. I think we were kind of successful for a while, but now with the culture wars going on, we're sliding back. But I think it has to be a kind of redirection of the language that we use, for one thing, so that everything isn't connected with the ideas of immorality, or that morality and goodness and all the things that faith stands for are somehow tied to sexuality. And I'm not sure if I'm making myself clear there. Sorry.
No, you're doing good, because it is exactly how you're saying it. I see it play out on people's faces. I had to speak at a church Saturday and Sunday, and even I found myself, replacing words to soften it a little bit. And I have to address things within myself, because I don't want to dumb down the message so much that it doesn't land and people are not brought the awareness that they should. But I have to, address my own issues that I have just growing up in the church and not being able to really openly speak about sex in certain ways, even when it was detriment for me, or like, could have been beneficial for me in decision making opportunities. So I definitely still, this is why I want to have these conversations more and more, because honestly, as I talked more, Saturday, I could see people loosening up, and I could see them become more comfortable with speaking up, asking questions, and more willing to maybe get tested when they feel it's opportunities for them to do that. So this is why we're doing this right here. Anybody else want to respond to prompt number 2?
I can real quick. Oh, I'll go
Oh,
ahead and
go
let
ahead.
Celeste, because I
No,
spoke.
go ahead. Go ahead.
You sure?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to be the only, but I'll tell you
No,
a
no.
quote from my 16-year-old grandson. He said and he used the air quotes, the Christian folks who cause us more problems, because we've had this discussion. He is worried about, going out there and meeting a girlfriend, and what do they do and not do. And he said that it's not, it's considered a gay issue and a choice in a lot of religious circles, and that stops young folks from wanting to talk about it because of the so-called air Christians. And when he did his little fingers like that, I knew exactly what he meant, because a lot of our churches, we probably need to start with the leaders, the lay leaders, the ministers, and educate them, because it is not um, biblically supported that they have some of these views that their parishioners or their members, work with. But we have to find a way to educate the children that are in their teen years and coming up and beginning to approach matters of sexuality, before we can start talking about, okay, now it's time to get tested for AIDS. So there's got to be a way to work with folks, and education is probably the key. And as Pat said, if you can't have those conversations at home, can you imagine how difficult it would be for someone to kind of remove the stigma and have those conversations in public? So I understand, Candace, when you said that, you had to kind of cut the air and lighten it a little bit, because that is a difficult topic, and it is considered a matter of choice and a lifestyle, if you will, that is associated with that. And the normal air quote Christian wouldn't have those problems. So, why discuss it in church?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I do see that approach taken a lot in church where, and I would love to spend more time, maybe in the future, really staying right there and addressing some things within that, because, even as I have to speak with parents a lot of times and kind of help them to address whatever they were grew up under, and figuring out what helped them, what harmed them, and what do they want to speak with their kids about, or how they want to approach it with their children. But even as you're speaking about adolescence and puberty and it being a choice and things, I kind of do want to still stick with delve into the biology of things and bring that up, sometimes. And even when it comes to the LGBTQ community, I hope I said that right, addressing some stigmas within there. So if any of you are willing, even out there in the World Wide Web, would like to get into those type of conversations, in the future, we definitely can. So, Miss Celeste.
Well, I didn't know if we have time to still speak about that, but I wanted to piggyback briefly off of what Pat was saying and Valerie. It's very important, and I feel that desensitizing the stigmatism of it and being in the church and education. Both of the ladies spoke about that, and my point is seeing and speaking to them where they are. Everyone says that about voting and about health issues, but actually being able to reach the the younger generation, like you said, you've worked with a lot of parents and the leveling up and things of that nature. Your books, I think it's important for us to reach them everywhere and not just the faith community. This is about the faith community partnershiping with the health. I agree with that, but a lot of times you need it from other sources as well, so it won't be so hard for them to associate the immorality and the sex or the HIV and that. To be able to have it in magazines, to have it on the internet, all the ways to that you could go to McDonald's and have a $5 coupon off. We have to talk about these issues. We have to make it prevalent in their lives, and not just at the faith. And I think that's where they're getting being health. I'm sorry, being healthy, um, and being what's the word I'm looking for? Being healthy and a Christian.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
It makes sense.
It
It
is it
does.
makes sense, and not because we're right now we're focusing on faith as well, but we're also all community organizers. And so just like Planned Parenthood and things of that nature, a lot of people say, "Oh, you're part of you know you're going to Planned Parenthood," but that's a stigmatism because everyone thinks, quote unquote, that's an abortion. Where in actuality, Planned Parenthood is a wonderful place.
Mhm.
Talks to them about health, about birth control, of having some of the girls get exams even prior to having sex.
Mhm.
So it's the stigmatism, I think, with quote unquote faith. If we're not teaching our kids every place else or giving them literature every place else, so by the time we want to discuss sexuality and faith, they're disconnected.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's kind of where I'm thinking about. In my personal life, being able to, I mean, well, you don't want to do it at Girl Scouts, but you have a group of girls that, right, maybe are camping or maybe are going to certain places or looking at certain magazines. I mean, the magazines all have feminine protection every corner. Every corner shows where you can get the gels and the jellies for sex. Why not teach them at that time and teach them the consequences? Remove the faith when you initially teaching them, and maybe that would desensitize that. But all of this, Pat and Valerie have wonderful. You're absolutely right, and I agree. But we got to reach them before we get them stigmatized with being immoral and having sex.
Yeah. I'm in agreement. The lens that we look at things,
Hmm.
it took me a while, growing up in church to look at things outside of that lens, and a lot of times if you don't do that, fear can grip you from making choices or getting more information. You just, like you say, you'll say, well, Planned Parenthood is bad, so I'm not
Hmm.
going to go there. And then now you decide on getting good information that you should have when you're making life choices and decisions. So I'm definitely in agreement with that. I think some sort of way, a plan of action can be created to put together information, like they're saying, to address those things, leaving it out. But like, today there are still a lot of people that's the only lens they look at things through. Is through
Hmm.
faith,
Hmm.
is through God, is through the Bible or whatever religious instruction they're going, they've committed to in their life. And to look outside of that, to them feels like an abomination or
Hmm.
sin or
Hmm.
going against
Hmm.
God. And, that's where I struggle with trying to get beyond that with people,
Hmm.
is when you can't look outside of that, so we can continue to talk about it. So to move forward, because I know with time we're hitting about the 30-minute mark. Um, we got two more prompts to go through. So breaking the stigma, HIV, faith, and compassion. How does fear, misinformation, judgment, and stigma affect people living with or at risk for HIV? And what does compassion look like when we don't have all the answers?
Okay, I want to talk about risk. I guess I don't know a lot now about living with HIV. I mean, I do know it's possible to live a decent life with HIV if you can get
Hmm.
your medication and that, which is good. But I mean, I guess I'm kind of expanding on what I said before. Fear and misinformation and judgment just keeps everybody at risk, I think. It's been a long time since I had teenagers or worked at Planned Parenthood, but I can't imagine that it's that different and probably worse down here and in this climate because people just pull their kids out of sex education in school or the schools don't have it or whatever. So I think it affects especially teenagers, but other people. the potential victims in several ways, because if I told you the things that these kids believe about sex and how you prevent pregnancy and how you prevent disease and how you, I mean, I can't even say it out loud, but I'm sure it's just wild stuff. And they get it from each other or from their older brother, because mom doesn't talk to them, and you can't ask at school, you can't ask your coach because then your coach will think you're gay, so they just had crazy stuff. And a lot of them probably still believe it, because we only got the ones where the mother called and said, I found out my kid's having sex. Can he come down and talk to you? And I think the stigma also affects, the provision of prevention services. Shouldn't give out condoms, you're only encouraging immorality. You're encouraging, they associate HIV only with sexual transmission, usually only with homosexual sexual transmission, and usually only with promiscuous homosexual transmission. And therefore, I guess homosexual promiscuous people should get AIDS. I'm not saying that, but that's the thing. But so you have, and with public health, it's really tricky. The whole faith public relationship in our country is so screwy anyway, in my opinion. And so you have whole organizations that are faith-based that are specifically charged by the government to keep people healthy, and yet they have an exemption from sexual or giving out condoms or whatever it is. So one of the obstacles, I think, is educating people to, I don't know, maybe demand more of their providers or demand more of the government, that our providers take care of everybody and not enforce this rigid sexual morality. I don't know.
Yeah, well, you did bring up a lot of good points as far as the stigmas, that can become very dangerous, and feeling like, oh, very promiscuous behavior is the only behaviors that lead to HIV or AIDS, or even gay sex is the only, route to that. And that was heavily believed in the 80s, early 90s, as people were beginning to first learn about HIV. It was pointed directly to gay males. And now, as a result, women, Black women in particular, are the newest in high cases, because we have that understanding in the back of our minds. Well, I'm not doing any of those things, so I can't contract it. But even today, this fact still remains, and we have to break that stigma in the hearts and minds of women, feeling like they can't, contract HIV as long as they're in monogamous relationships, as long as, they've stuck with one partner or sticking with one partner. You don't know what that other person is doing. And I do often suggest to people that they stick to some sort of regimen, for their own sexual health and well being, as far as just regularly testing, testing before you get into a relationship together with that partner, discussing it with them. When is the last time you've been tested? And judging their response accordingly. If they're like, well, I'm not worried about that, you have to say, well, hey, my sexual wellness plan says that I have to, honor someone that's going to be getting tested as well. I can't just let that be okay, So, and then after you're getting out of relationships, getting tested again, and just knowing that these are the things that I need to do in order to stay well in within my sexual health, is something to break down those stigmas.
I think that's such a good, and it also, I'm sorry, just real quick. I think it also points to not only, empowering women. A lot of women don't even feel that they can demand their partner use a condom. So a lot of it is just, much less get tested. So I agree with you, the empowering women however we can to feel like, yeah, you can take control of your own life.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I offer to test men, and they will say, "You want to get me in trouble with my wife? You want to get me in trouble with my significant other?" Because it automatically is going to say I've been unfaithful, or I've cheated, or I've done something that to break a commitment to the person I'm in a relationship with. And so I even have to tell them, like, no, you go to the physical, you get your blood pressure checked, you do all of these other things, add that to it, but we have a lot of thoughts that come to our mind when it comes to getting tested and things about HIV and AIDS and getting tested. So,
And Pat, that is so dead on for today. I have a friend married 36 years, and her husband had a fun night out with older fellas at a conference, and within months, he returned home. They maintained their physical contact, and she was not feeling well. And when she went in for testing, of course, they drew the blood, they did the AIDS test too, and she came back positive. And she did everything that she was supposed to do. She was monogamous. She didn't step out, but she really feels to this day. We've had, I call and check on her, but she is afraid to go to her primary to get treatment. She ended up going to a health department. She is not speaking to her sister and other people that are close to her because she doesn't want the stigma attached to it. Whereas, like I said, she's been in church all her life, all those good things. So I think not only do we have a challenge with educating folks that are in the faith community, but we really have a challenge with meeting people where they are and removing the stigma attached. Because if it's killing her inside to know that now she's got this, she sees it as something wrong with her. Um, she's really stepping back from having the grandkids over, cooking. There's so much misinformation out there. She doesn't want to, get her grandkids sick. It is really just, turning her life around. So when you're having this conversation, Candace, there's a lot of work to be done. There are some things that are being done. But as I see the country stepping back and women having less rights in other arenas and spaces, so do they have less rights in controlling what happens to them in their bodies and with their own health. So there are other discussions that can be had with the idea that this is a choice issue and this is a gay issue, and we've long been talking about it like it is, but it really is a health issue, much like some others, and it should be treated as such so that there isn't the stigma attached.
absolutely. And that testimony you gave, Ms. Val, is the testimony of a lot of women in church. More than you would ever know, because they do exactly what she's done, which is isolate. Now I feel all of this shame, and you haven't even done anything wrong. So much shame and fear that you won't get the help to live a good life. So that is the number one thing that I try to work on as far as women and women in the church and married women, who feel like, oh, I'm good. I don't need to get tested. But still, like I said, it should be just something, a part of your wellness plan, to have that test no matter what, and not let it say something else to you, such as, oh, I've been unfaithful, or even that my partner has been unfaithful, It just should be something to do. All right. Anybody else?
Marlo, it's all the women talking.
Ooh.
I was told when women are talking, you do not talk. You listen. But I'm going to share a story about my uncle. So my uncle who passed in the late '90s, and an aunt I had who passed away. I want to say in the early 2000s. I remember growing up as a kid, and there was a lot of stigma around AIDS and HIV. Didn't really know much about it. It wasn't really talked about in our community, right? It was like a hush hush thing. And I remember my one of my grandmother's sister on my father's side, she was very sickly, and it had been brought to my attention that she was suffering from HIV, AIDS. Sorry, she had AIDS at the time. And I just remember as a child, a teenager, going to her funeral and seeing how she was so loved, right? And one thing I loved about my family on my dad's side is they did not alienate her. They did not ostracize her, treated her just the same as everybody else. Matter of fact, I think more people even looked out for her because they knew that she was dealing with drugs, dealing with the disease itself. So I was happy to see my family rally around her and support her. And same with my uncle. Like I didn't know till many years later that he died from that. But it's something that I think in our community, particularly in the African American community, I don't want to say taboo, but it's just something that sometimes people don't talk about, or they feel embarrassed about, or even with our health, Black men, we're very stubborn, right? We don't want to go to the doctor. We don't want to go and get the checkups, but you have to. That's what inspired me to take my health seriously. Not only is it that I'm a father and I want to be around a long time for my children, but also I had to think about my ancestors. I had uncles who didn't go to the doctors. I had people who didn't care about their health. And then you go to the doctor and you have stage 5 colon cancer. Um, we have to, as Black men, and I'm particularly talking to the Black man because I'm the only man on the panel, but we have to take our health serious. We have to be more aware and be, instead of being reactive, we need to get ahead of it. We need to do the preliminary things, right? The preventive things, right? Going to get those checkups like Candace was talking about. Um, but so many stories you hear, like Miss Val just shared, that personal story. Same thing with Magic Johnson. Look, he was out there with the boys, with the different girls, and got contracted the disease. And thank God, from what we know now, that his wife did not contract it or the baby that she was carrying. But it's so serious. It is so serious. And we know why it attacks a lot of people of color. But I am happy that it seems in the last several years there's been more advancements in medicine that is allowing people to live longer, that is allowing them to reclaim their health. It's not a death sentence anymore like it was in the 80s and the 90s, right? Um, and I'm pretty sure within the next 10, 15 years, the way medicine is moving so quickly, it would probably be eradicated, just like my hope with cancer. Um, but it takes research, it takes commitment, it takes the faith community, it takes the Black community, the white community, all of us coming together and having a common purpose, right? So that's just my 2 cents. I'm not an expert or anything, but I could just tell you from my perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, we at the club.
Sorry about that, you guys. I'm so sorry. My one camera went out. That's why I had a second something set up. So Kenny's working on the main one. Can you all still hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Man, I had another point to make and it done slipped my mind with all that noise. But I was gonna say I do want to get a men's conversation going, Marlo.
That's a good
So
idea.
yeah, whenever I do that, I'm definitely going to be giving you a call because you're right, and I have opportunities a lot of time to talk to men, but they're normally in person. Okay, switch. Am
Yeah,
I
I
back?
think that
Can you
echo
all hear
comes because
me?
you got two different things on.
Oh, this. Can
Let's
you
see.
all?
You got to either mute one or cut one off because I
That.
see you twice. That means you're in two systems.
Okay. It's still showing me what I gotta do.
Oh, this. Okay. You think it's okay? Can you all hear me?
Yes,
Okay. All right. I think I'm good. Thank you. Sorry.
trying to
All
be
right.
fancy with your two different views.
Good. Okay, now I gotta put this one on. Hold on. I'm doing a lot. All right. Think we're back. We're on the last prompt. Let's get through this. We're still working through some technical difficulties with my oh it is. That's what it's saying. Okay. All right. So moving forward from awareness to action. That's our last prompt. What can individuals, churches, ministries, community organizations, and families actually do to spread accurate information, encourage testing, support people living with HIV, and create spaces where people feel safe asking questions?
Yeah, I'll start again if you want. I don't know. I think two things that need to happen, and they may not exact one. I think one. Looking at us, I think we're all from various Christian backgrounds, but there's lots of other faiths in this country and in this area, and several of them are very well represented in the medical community and the scientific research community. Um, like to see more interacting with people. I know I'm trying to do that in our own organization. I'm not always successful. And then with that in mind, also I guess it's the same thing. Like to and for us to faith communities to take back the word faith. I think we have lost the dominionist, right wing strain. I know when Val said, her grandson used Christian in quotes. Well, that's what's become Christianity. And um, I know I hate to say it, but I think a lot of people, and sometimes I'm one of them, if somebody starts going on and on about Jesus, I'm like, I want to get out of here, because this person is going to screw me over somehow. It's the same as like they took over the American flag. If I see a truck with an American flag on it, I get scared, and I shouldn't be scared because it's my country and my flag, but I do. So I think we maybe need to reclaim in the public space more, identify ourselves as faith organizations when we're or people of faith, at least if we're not representing an organization, when we're talking about these things or when we're educating people or when we're giving out pamphlets or whatever, and make it clear that you can be faith-based. I think nobody has a problem with compassionate care, like aftercare or hospice care, that kind of care, palliative care. But there's a space where we have to say, like, no, people of faith are also involved in prevention and education and breaking down stigmas. We do not believe in these things. We believe in those things, if that makes sense.
I have a couple of things, Candace. I attended a virtual roundtable not too long ago. It was put on by the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine. It was a workshop that was faith, health, collaboration to improve populations. And at the end, they gave us examples of communities across the country that are embarking on this agreement or this space, trying to make folks work together and see the benefit of clearing out some of these stigmas. And let me just give you a couple of the programs that they had. A faith-based community did a residential kind of a substance abuse recovery program in Alabama that uses a life plan approach to connecting somebody to their goals and their life goals, so that the physical and the spiritual are explicitly connected. And then another model in Memphis, they presented and relayed how the hospital chief, executive officer, partnered with several faith leaders in the community to leverage hundreds of his congregations. And by by saying that, it was an educational piece. They went out, the actual doctor at the hospital started convening a support services committee dealing with faith leaders to educate them on the importance of folks being tested, taking care of their health, and understanding their faith. And then, even in the state of Florida, most people don't know it, but we have a Wise Woman Project, which was created by Congress as part of the CDC. And in that Wise Women Project, we go out to women of color and minorities and those with low incomes and underserved communities to explain to them about testing in different areas of their health, their age components, how to work together. And that is actually paid for through a grant from the health department. So they train women, and I'm a coach locally. They train women to go out and speak to other women about their health needs. So there are different things that you could do that are already being done and modeled across the country if they seriously wanted to move from this platform of talking about it to like being about it. And it certainly is successful in certain areas, but it's something that is not easy. There's challenges with trust, outreach, resource distribution, and even with the resource distribution, places of worship can serve as hubs, physical hubs for health screenings, for vaccination clinics, like they do with food distribution during crisis and things. Faith leaders can act as change agents. These are the folks that are talking to the people in their congregations and in their membership bodies. So there are many areas of collaboration that came out of that virtual workshop, and they could be some that we could mirror here in our own community.
Yeah.
I love it.
Wise
Love
women.
it. Yeah, I would love to know more about that, Miss Val, if you're able to forward me any information, because that does sound like something we definitely could get going here. And it is kind of in some churches, we're able to leave condoms. If someone does come to them and speak to them about, needing testing, they'll reach out to us and we can provide them with the testing. So some relationships we've been able to build within the church and things like that. And so, yeah, I would love to learn more for sure.
And I also learned from one of the doctors there, one of his favorite quotes is that when he's working in these spaces, the doctors always ask, "What's the matter?" while the chaplain asks, "What matters?" So it's two different concepts and ways of treating an individual. And for us to move that needle and make those conversations appropriate, you have to deal with the whole person, not just what matters, but what's the matter, what's bothering you, what's ailing you, and make it a safe space to talk about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else had any?
Um, well, I love what Val said, because I also would like to learn a lot more about the Wise Woman Project. I had no idea about that. It sounds so good. And then just what you said reminded what Val was saying about, what's really the matter with you. I mean, we're not looking at mental health. And I don't mean us, but I mean, society. Like, we separated mental health from other health so much. And I don't know, Candace, I'm assuming that has a lot to do also with HIV treatment and transmission, that depression, fear, uh, if you are gay, gay teenagers commit suicide, so you're not going to, you can be suicidal and you're not going to tell anybody about it. I just think there's a mental health component maybe that public health isn't looking at attached to it.
Yeah, it is. It definitely is more things that have to be addressed as well. Oftentimes, even as I'm just approaching people to talk to them and bring them information, often other things begin to come up, because it just brings up things for people. And I see it immediately with the first word. So some things I'll ask faithful leaders is when I say these particular words, just what comes up in you, because that's probably the things that's coming up in the parishioners or in your congregation, when they're thinking about these things. And how can we address them? How can we make people feel safe speaking about these things versus fear coming up? And now I'm sweating bullets because I'm thinking about my soul, versus thinking about my health, and my physical health right now, which is what it's about. So yeah, man, this has been a wonderful conversation. I think we're hitting the hour mark, and I told you all I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but we definitely will be having more conversations August 30th, and I believe, or the last Sunday of August is when this holiday, not holiday, when this day is honored, Faith and HIV awareness. So I will be sending you all a follow-up email with some suggested social media prompts that you can post online that may spark conversations within your own communities. And people may come out and say some things that you now have some knowledge to correct them on, or places that you can lead them to if they have any inquiries. And then as well, I want to again invite you all Thursday to our workshop happening in Port Richey at Harm Reduction Anonymous. So I do have a flyer here. Hopefully, there we go. Yeah, August 27th from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. We'll be having more interactive chats, and I'll be playing clips from this conversation during the workshop as well for us to discuss. So, yeah, thank you all so much. Anybody else have anything else they want to add? Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you all so much. Thank you for your time today. And all right. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay, everybody have a great
Nice
day.
seeing you.
Nice seeing you again, Val. And nice seeing
Yeah,
Yes,
you
it's nice seeing you
that's
guys.
yes. See.
today.
We have to reconnect.